with me today two friends, Norman Bossy and his wife Cynthia Bossy, and they have a very interesting hobby. When I asked him what he was doing, he said lighthouses. And I said, "What? Lighthouses?" And he said, "Yes, we have a group of us who go around inspecting lighthouses, and I could not imagine that being that interesting. And would you know, the next week, the Hartford Courant had a big page full of people at Lighthouse and the things that people do going around doing lighthouses. So I'd like to introduce you to Norman, and he's going to tell us a little bit about some of the lighthouses that he has seen.
Well, I started lighthousing about 20 years ago. I retired and I wanted to do something other than what I was doing. So one Christmas, I bought myself a lighthouse, which is on display here, the Nubble Light, New York Beach.
Which one is that? Here?
This one right here.
This one right here, yeah.
Yeah. We lived about 20 miles away from there, and so we used to go to York quite a bit. And that's how it all started.
And
We joined a club, and we've been touring the country. And one time we were in Europe, and we're still going.
Oh, now, Sin, you're the wife, so you had to go along with this?
I certainly did.
Oh, you mean you were hooked right from the beginning, or were you?
Pretty much so. Our first trip, we went to Maryland for our Harbor Lights reunion.
Yeah.
And in the elevator, there was one gentleman, and he says, well, why don't you join our chapter? And I said, why? What for? He says, well, come down to our table. So, of course, we did. And from there, we signed up with NEL, which is New England Lighthouse Lovers.
Yeah.
It's a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation. So through that, I'm on the board, we both are on the board, and we've done a lot for preservation for other lighthouses.
Oh.
It's been a challenge, but it's been very interesting, and
It did
we love
floor
it.
me that I thought this was something that they just went out and looked at a lighthouse and came
No.
back. I was born on an island, and there are lighthouses everywhere, and I just never bothered with them. But can you imagine, they have a magazine. It's called The Keeper's Log. Is a magazine of this organization, and they have all kinds of information on lighthouses from the beginning all the way up to present day. And they have this fabulous picture of the innards of the lighthouse and what generates all the power for it to go out over the water. And of course, anywhere you have water, you'll have a lighthouse, and whether it's a lake or river or out on the ocean. What was I going to ask you?
The use of the lighthouses.
Oh, yeah.
Up at Prince of Wales.
Yeah. What is the use for these lighthouses?
Well, they're basically used for helping navigation. A lot of ships were sunk, coming into harbors, hitting rocks. If you go to Portland Head, you will see the remnants of one ship that hit the rocks right there at Portland Head. And it's mostly all over the country. If you could, it just sounds kind of crazy, but if you could wash the water from the ocean away from 4 or 5 miles from a lighthouse, you'd be surprised how much
Rocks
ships that sunk getting close to their destination. And the lens they have different size lens. Now the first order lens, that weighs about 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, it's,
And it's got a focus of about 20 miles out to sea. Now, you go to smaller areas, smaller lighthouses, they have smaller lens, and they go from first order down to the sixth order lens. So it all depends on what lighthouse has the.
yeah. What got you started in the first place? Did you just see a lighthouse and wanted to?
No. We were born close to the Nubble Light,
Yeah.
and it always intrigued me. And like I said, when I got out of retired, I wanted to do something other than what I was doing.
Now you showed me hundreds of the models that you have at home, and you wanted to show me this one that's on the desk here, but that has a long history.
That is one of the first lighthouses back 250 BC. And
Oh, that's that famous lighthouse in Egypt.
in Egypt, yes. And it had a focus of about 35 miles. They would light the fire on top, and they had a mirror, and they think it was made of polished copper, and it would reflect the light out to sea that far. And you have the second one that was in 350 BC, and that was the beginning of
Those
lighthouses.
lighthouses.
Yes, yeah.
Now this one looks sort of ancient. I remember this is from Rhodes. Is it the Isle of Rhodes?
Yes, it is.
The
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the guy, but
Yeah, that's Greece, isn't it?
Colossus of Rhodes.
the
Yes,
Colossus
yeah,
of Rhodes.
Yeah.
I remember reading about that in the history books. Now that came down with a
That one came down with the earthquake.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that one also came
Yeah.
down. And I think there was some of the pediments of these still here. And they found one of the feet on this, and he was extremely large. I don't know how high that would be, but maybe a couple of hundred feet.
Yeah. This one here was over 40 stories high.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I gave it a big
That-
focus of 35
way out
miles
into
in
the
ocean.
Mediterranean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, coming back to today's lighthouses, and there are many of them. How many have you seen?
I'd say we've seen maybe about 300,
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you gone up the coast of
all the way up to New Brunswick.
New Brunswick?
PEI.
Yeah.
PEI.
Well, PEI, that's where I'm from. So
Yep.
we had, they're sort of ordinary ones up there. They have a white building, and there's maybe some red stuff painted on it, and then the light on the top.
Yeah.
I think all your Canadian ones are red and white in
Yeah.
semi specs. They have different,
Okay.
unique.
Did you go into any of those?
Oh, yes. Whenever we go on these tours, they always seem to open the lighthouse for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the East Quarter Light, that's about a half a mile out. And you have to go at low tide. The tide rushes in.
That was in one of these pictures you
Yeah,
were showing me.
yeah,
You want to hold that up? Maybe this one?
This is East Quarter Light. And to get to it, you have to go at low tide. You climb down a ladder, you go about 50 feet, then you climb up on this little island. These stairs are right here, you climb over. Then on the other side, you climb down and you walk to the edge and you get to the lighthouse. Now, you have to be careful because the tide rushes in very fast. So if you get stuck, then you have to stay on the island for a good 8 hours.
The Bay of Fundy, while
Bay
it
of
comes in, you
Fundy.
can actually watch it, the tide come
You
in.
watch it come in and you watch it go out.
Yeah, you,
Yeah.
if you walk slowly, it'll catch
Follow,
up with
you can
Yeah,
follow,
you.
yes, yeah, yeah. And
Now, is
all-
that near Campobello?
yes, it is. Now, on the way to East Quaddy, we stopped in this beautiful building, house, that's President Roosevelt summer home in Campobello.
They had that
It's-
on TV the other night when they did the FDR program.
Oh,
And, and I recognized the building, but I didn't, it wasn't in color, so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really is a nice residence.
It is open to the public. It takes about an hour and a half to go through it, and it's very, very interesting. The grounds are spotless. So,
Now, the lighthouses take you to a lot of different places.
yes.
You went into New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
Huh?
And what did you see in the lighthouses there? Because all I see are, I remember the buildings standing there, but
Well, you see the kitchens, how they were back in the 20s.
and they all
30s.
lived in the houses.
They all
in the
have
lighthouses.
kitchens. Yes, yeah.
I don't want to make a joke about lighthouse keeping, but
They're always
well,
kind-
it reminds you, or sometimes it takes me back to my grandparents' homes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there were difficult times to live. There was no electricity, and there was
Yeah.
a lot of hardships, but they survived and had
and of
quite
course, they're always in places that you can't get to.
not easily.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
And you had a picture there of someone doing clothes on an old hand wringer. And,
Yes, that was, I believe, on Burnt Island,
in
and
Maine.
that's in Maine.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, we took the last cruise out last summer to Burnt Island, and it's a beautiful, beautiful island. The grounds are immaculate, beautiful. But the keeper, she told us how they had been there, and finally they do now have electricity, and you know how they by boat. It's the only way in and out.
Well, this is an interesting one, and I think we have it.
It's right up on the top.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and this because it's there by itself, so it looks very tall.
It is
Now, did
tall.
you guys walk to the top and walk around the?
268 steps. I climbed the top. That was a dream I had always wanted to do, and it is Cape Hatteras. And it is the largest, tallest, I should say, tallest lighthouse in the United States.
And that's very confined as you're going through there.
Yeah.
Because I went, into the Statue of Liberty, and I don't think I got
No, you didn't.
one
you
flight
couldn't.
up, and I couldn't take it. I
Take
had
it.
to get out of there. It was
Yeah.
claustrophobic.
Yeah, yeah.
I was, I should say, because a lot of people were going up to the top.
It is.
And,
It's beautiful. Grounds are gorgeous. Yeah.
And now, is there any? Does this burn light night and day? You have a light on night and day.
there is a light. Yes.
So you would have to be careful not to get that light shining on you,
Well,
because
you're-
that's a concentration of
Now,
light.
you are protected. You don't
Oh.
go as far. You have one story below the light.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
you can go out and walk around,
Yeah.
and the light is above.
Oh, I see.
Where-
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that light turn, or is it focused on out?
The light turns. Yes, yes, it turns. It's on brass wheels. It used to be soaked in mercury, the original lights. Now
Oh.
they do not have
Yeah.
mercury anymore. No.
Now, when you go, when you went up to New Brunswick, did you stop along the way, like Booth Bay Harbor and
We said, well, on that one there, we were.
Machias and Jonesport and all those places
Yeah.
along the
We
way?
went to Bangor, and from there we picked up the bus and we headed up to
Okay.
Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
PEI, and that whole area.
Yeah. The people who live near the sea, of course, they take these for granted.
Yeah.
And they
yeah.
they never. The North Light on North Cape on Prince Edward Island is very well known because
Yeah.
the St. Lawrence, the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the Northumberland Strait come together there. And you can see when the tide is changing, it overlaps, and it creates a lot of problems for the boats, particularly
okay.
the small fishermen boats. My grandfather was a schooner, had a schooner, and he went from New Brunswick to Prince Edward Island way back when. That's how they conducted the commerce, and I'm sure they were looking for, the lights, and because it was far enough
out.
that it would require. It might even be out on dark days and so forth.
Yeah.
One interesting fact, when the Titanic hit the iceberg, the distress signal came into Cape Bears in PEI,
Yeah.
and they were the first. Also, another lighthouse in Newfoundland also received the distress signal at the same time. So we did visit the lighthouse on the Cape, at Cape Bears, and it also had the radio receiver that was
that's interesting.
there at the time.
So as you were reminding me that Newfoundland wasn't part of Canada
It was
at that
not.
time. It was annexed, I think, a few years after Canada became a country in its own right.
Yeah, Newfoundland and Labrador became part of the province in March of 1949.
Before that, it was part of Newfoundland. Labrador was part of Quebec, and before that, and Newfoundland was hanging out there by itself.
Well, they claim it was part of the UK. I don't know. I think another interesting thing on the lighthouse to my right with the airplane, some of the lighthouses in Maine, they have families that live on the island, and at Christmas, they have what they were called, there was the Flying Santa, and he would fly over these lighthouses and drop Christmas presents to the kids and whoever was living at the lighthouse at the time. And from there, they progressed to helicopters. That made it much easier. But the kids all get their Christmas gifts on
even
on
if they're
Christmas.
way off.
Way out.
In this lighthouse, way out in the wilderness.
Yep.
Where would the kids go to school? Would they have to
Well, the
maybe
kids,
go in and live with relatives during school days?
Yes, on Burn Island, in Booth Bay, the family lived in town during the school year, and once school were out, they all go to the island, and they all had specific jobs. They would, they cooked, and they had a big garden. And a lot of times, the lighthouse keeper were very friendly with the lobstermen, and they would kind of help each other out. So it'd be nothing for a lobsterman to stop in the morning, maybe drop 8 or 10 lobsters off, and say thank you for helping me. And so
How
they
do you
had,
sign up for these lighthouses?
so they had
like
it was
to
a
do that.
tough life, but they had some rewards.
Yeah. What about this one you brought in that must have some significance for you?
That was my favorite. That was my Christmas present to myself after I retired.
Oh, okay.
And that's what started us into lighthousing. Yeah, that's the Nubble Light at York, Maine.
Well, now, what are some of the side benefits of going to see lighthouses? I mean,
There's the benefits. Well, one, we can go and climb the tower. Otherwise, it's locked to the general public. But joining these groups has
and
opened our
normally you
eyes.
wouldn't be driving up there unless you had some objective, and so then visit
Well,
around?
it's the knowledge too, and there's a lot of the history that if the lighthouse keeper is there or a representative, they give you the story and the history and on the families. There's one on Mantinicus Island in Maine, and it's a fabulous story. It's the father had to go to the land to get supplies. I can't remember how far away it is, but it's quite a distance. Actually, it's 27 miles out from the land. And the daughter, because the mother was ill, she had to tend to the lighthouse, make sure she got up there with the oil and kept it going. The storm came up. Dad could not get home for a month. And this, I believe she was 13 or 14 years old, and she maintained that lighthouse in the proper fashion that her father did. Yeah, and she has become known, Ida Lewis, she's become known as a very famous female lighthouse keeper. And of course, there have been several other women that have been lighthouse keepers.
Oh, that's great.
But
Now-
it's the knowledge, and it's a lot of personal stories that they've shared over the years, and of course, the preservation of them is a big issue.
Well, I learned something this morning, just talking with Norm, that the people who look after lighthouses are actually in uniform.
Yes,
And
they
They
are.
are part of the Coast Guard, I would imagine.
Yes, they went there.
Yep, yep.
So they have an official status on the.
Oh, yes, they do. Yep.
That was interesting for me. Because this man, he doesn't have any bars on his arm, but he has 6 gold buttons. Gives
Yeah.
him some status. Huh? Well, let's. I wonder if we could take a moment and we'll have a look at this beautiful quilt that's been made, and it features a lot of the lighthouses that we couldn't bring in. Sin, do you want to tell us something about this?
Well, my very, very favorite is Split Rock.
Okay.
We were out there with my cousin years ago, and from there to here, it's like 68 feet, and we have to go around the park down to the forest area, and I bonded with it because I leaned right into Lake Superior and just felt the wave come up to me. So I've always liked that there. My second favorite is Cape Hatteras, which is on the top. That is,
This
yeah,
one, yeah.
that is
It's a different
a
one.
beautiful. It's a beautiful area out there. It's in North Carolina,
Yeah.
and it's the tallest one in the country. And as I
Is it
said,
out in the sand? Is that all sand?
Well, it's-
Sandbars?
well, not so much so now. Some because they have constructed. They had to remove it years ago,
Oh, I see.
and
Yeah.
and when they removed the area,
Yeah.
they enhanced it with different buildings and. But it's absolutely beautiful. When you get on top there, you just look out and you think, what a beautiful world we live
Yeah,
in. It is
yeah.
just absolutely so inspiring. Yep. And those are my 2 favorite.
Well,
Yep.
you said
There we have
200
not
feet
been.
up. That certainly would.
That's
Yes.
the picture that's on. That's
Oh, the-
On the top.
down there.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've never been Hawaii.
Oh,
No.
Diamond Head.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Look at the palm trees.
yeah.
Yep.
You certainly would get a great view of the surrounding
Oh,
area from
it is.
these lookout places here.
When you imagine what the Fresnel lens, at the distance that they project out into the water,
Yeah.
you too can see a great distance. And that is just, it's wonderful. It's just
You know,
wonderful.
I read an article where a lot of lighthouses are being sold, and people are converting them into all kinds of things, residences or
Right.
Bed and breakfast.
bed and breakfasts or antique stores or whatever.
They have, yeah,
Whatever they want to do with it.
yeah.
Now, is that due to the GPS that you use for your car and the guidance systems that the boats have? And they must have.
GPS, actually, to be honest, they probably do not need lighthouses anymore today.
Yeah.
Due to GPS, and they get you right to
And
where you want to.
the satellite
yes.
will tell you exactly where you are and,
Yes.
and
Yes.
what you should avoid.
Yes,
Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. But look what we're losing because of
that's true.
because
Right.
of that. And the things that this draws you to this area, and then you have a lot of things you could do. You had a lighthouse near those ponies that are down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look out at Lookout.
Lookout
Mount.
Cape,
Yeah, is that
Lookout.
on here?
No,
No.
it is not.
Okay,
No. That
This
right
one?
there with the ponies.
oh yeah. This is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like
It's-
that
it's
one.
similar,
Yeah,
but-
not quite.
And,
the way the diamonds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And the ponies that are
these ponies, yeah.
on the island. Yep. They keep about 120 ponies. They
And-
don't want to overpopulate, and they
Yeah.
come in and they pick them up and they take them on into the.
Little serendipity that you have with your hobby going around looking
Right.
at lighthouses.
Yeah.
Well, those ponies are so smart, they can submerge their heads deep enough to get away from the salty part of the water
To get
to survive.
Survive. Yeah.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah,
Isn't
that was-
interesting?
yeah.
I've read about them. They go in and cull them out every couple of years.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and what do they do to create that they don't get overbred and
They take them over to the mainland.
and
Yep.
and bring in some new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been
Well, it's enough
very
that-
interesting
They are actually born on the island.
on the island
Yeah.
there. And
Yes.
so that's their
Yeah.
home. This has been very interesting, starting from Alexandria and Egypt way back 3,000 years ago, and Rhodes, and then we're into Maine, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and all the all the trips you took to get to these places.
Yeah.
Now you talked about Mackinac Island. Do you have one here from Mackinac?
No, we
Island?
do not.
That we don't.
No,
No.
that was in 2005.
They would have. They would have some up there
Up on
because
Lake
that's on the
Michigan.
Great Lakes, and they have.
Yeah.
Great Lakes has about 160 lighthouses, maybe more than that on the Great Lakes.
And
Yeah.
so you've got to make another trip up there.
Well, we did. We were there last year
Oh, okay.
to Traverse City,
Yeah.
and we toured the lighthouses on that side of Lake Michigan.
So the benefits of being a lighthouse keeper is to
Travel.
travel and you
Go
get
into
to
lighthouses.
see a lot of lighthouses,
Yeah.
and there's always another one to see.
That's right.
I had a group of lighthouses that were on a computer, and it showed the abuse that they take. And it had them out on jetties, and the storms would hit them,
Yeah.
and the ice built up. This
Oh.
is on Lake Superior.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm,
The
Yes.
ice built up,
Yeah.
you couldn't even see the building.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
One interesting, if people are interested in knowing about lighthouses, there's a website on Google. You type in Lighthouse Friends. You can make that friends plural
yeah,
.com.
lighthousefriends.com.
Friends.com. And they'll open it up and it'll say map. You click onto the map and they'll bring up all the United States, all of Canada, and you pick whatever city you want, whatever state you want, and they'll bring up all the lighthouses in that area. So
Please tune in again, and we'll have more programs on what our seniors are doing in retirement.